नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्या संप्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। पप्लवरहितः प्रज्ञानघनः प्रत्यगर्थो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा मा गृधः कस्य स्विद्धनं कुर्वन्नेवेह कर्माणि जिजीविषेच्छतं समाः। एवं त्वयिनान्यथेतोऽस्ति न कर्म लिप्यते नरे। असुर्यानाम ते लोका अन्धेन तमसा वृताः तांस्ते प्रेत्याभिगच्छन्ति ये के चात्महनो जनाः। अनेजदेकं मनसो जवीयो नैनद्देवा आप्नुवन् पूर्वमर्षत् तद्धावतोऽन्यानत्येति तिष्ठत् तस्मिन्नपो मातरिश्वा दधाति। तदेजति तन्नैजति तद्दूरे तद्वन्तिके तदन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्यास्य बाह्यतः। यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्येवानुपश्यति सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं ततो न विजुगुप्सते। यस्मिन् सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मैवाभूद्विजानतः तत्र को मोहः कः शोकः एकत्वमनुपश्यतः। सपर्यगाच्छुक्रमकायमव्रणम् अस्नाविरं शुद्धमपापविद्धं कविर्मनीषी परिभुः स्वयंभूर्याथा तथ्यतोऽर्थान् व्यदधाच्छाश्वतीभ्यः समाभ्यः। अन्धन्तमः प्रविशन्ति ये विद्यामुपासते ततो भूय इव ते तमो य उविद्यायां रताः। अन्यदेवाहुर्विद्यया अन्यदाहुरविद्यया इति शुश्रुमधीराणां येनस्तद्विचचक्षिरे। विद्यां चाविद्यां च यस्तद्वेदो भयं सः अविद्यया मृत्युं तीर्त्वा विद्ययामृतमश्नुते। अन्धन्तमः प्रविशन्ति ये सम्भूतिमुपासते ततो भूय इव ते तमो यौ सम्भूत्याग्रताः अन्यदेवाहुः सम्भवात् अन्यदाहुरसम्भवात् इति शुश्रुमधीराणां येनस्तद्विचचक्षिरे सम्भूतिं च विनाशं च यस्तद्वेदो भयं सः विनाशेन मृत्युं तीर्त्वा सम्भूत्यामृतमश्नुते हिरण्मयेन पात्रेण सत्यस्यापि हितं मुखं तत्त्वं पूषन्नपावृणु सत्यधर्माय दृष्टये पूषन्ने कर्षेयम सूर्यप्राजापत्यव्यूहरश्मीन् समूहतेजो यत्ते रूपं कल्याणतमं तत्ते पश्यामि योऽसावसौ पुरुषः सोऽहमस्मि वायुरनिलममृतमथेदं भस्मान्तं शरीरम् ॐ क्रतो स्मर कृतं स्मर क्रतो स्मर कृतं स्मर ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. So in this session on the Upanishads, we will be studying the very origins of yoga. These extremely ancient texts, collections of teachings of various masters, contain the seeds, the foundation, the fundamental ideas over which later great yogis such as Sage Patanjali from Raja Yoga formed the philosophical system which came to be known as Raja Yoga 200 years before Christ. And then approximately in the 10th century, with Guru Gorakshanatha and other masters of the Natha tradition, it was further developed and evolved into what is known as Hatha Yoga. But the very foundation of yoga itself, without any adjective such as Raja, Hatha, without any adjective being attached to it, just yoga itself, has its origins in the Upanishads, in these collections of various masters' teachings. And that is the reason we study them, that is the reason we discuss them as part of our attempt to go deeper into our practice of yoga. This concluding section of this Ishavasya Upanishad, 15, 16, 17, and 18, which contains prayers. And that is quite a strange thing, because the first section of the Upanishad really discussed the fundamentals of yoga practice. Can see very clear parallels between Patanjali's teachings and the first section of this Upanishad. Then the second section, the middle section, was about the experience of consciousness in its purest state, in deep meditation as expressed by the seer of this Upanishad, the Dhyanga. And then after that, after he also pointed out the importance of meditating on the body as well as the transcendental consciousness, the importance of both, all these discussions, the importance of a very active approach as well as of a very passive, meditative approach, a synthesis of these two kinds of dichotomies which seem to be so opposite. How can a person be active and passive or meditative at the same time? Why is it important to meditate on the body as well as to go deeper into it? All these things were discussed by him, and after that, the final section of which we will study the last mantra today, this section is a section of prayer. Prayer to the light. Prayer to the uncreated light within. And we had a detailed discussion on what this light stands for within ourselves. All these discussions, previous discussions that we have had, are available on YouTube, so anyone willing to listen to them, to see them, that is the reason we are recording it, so that because students, practitioners keep on changing, so those who come new, they can be connected. Should I speak a little bit louder? उसका बेस जो है वो बढ़ाना पड़ेगा थोड़ा सा. So why this final section? Why this final section of prayer to the light? It seems really out of place because everything has been mentioned, everything has been said, and why suddenly now he concludes with a prayer? Why? By this he is implying the importance of one very special aspect of yoga, which is known as bhakti yoga. The yoga of love, the yoga of devotion, the yoga of deep devotional involvement. Or we can say deep emotional involvement. It is not only intellectual understanding, jnana yoga, or experience, but because experience is very difficult only by intellectual understanding. We can conceptually understand something that this is how it is because the masters have taught us this, the masters have said it, that why it must be like this. But to take it to an experiential level, these emotions, which are, by the way, completely illogical. We can think very logically, we can comprehend things very logically, but our emotions don't follow our logic. They don't belong to the logical aspect of our being. They are the illogical side of our being. And unless they are not involved, they are not brought into the picture. And that is why, see, confluences have always, in Indian holy places, confluences are always considered extremely sacred. They are, Rig Veda, the most ancient collection of teaching, says that Sangatheja Nadinam, at the confluence of two rivers, a wise person is born. And what do they mean by that? That when two streams of thought merge into one stream, then our understanding becomes wider. The horizon of our understanding expands. But the most sacred confluence in India, where this greatest gathering of Kumbh Mela happens once in 12 years, is the confluence of Ganga and Yamuna in Prayag, in Allahabad. That is the most sacred confluence, and that is why, as a pilgrimage center, Prayag, Allahabad, is known as the king of all pilgrimage centers. Why? Why? What is the deep symbolical significance of that? Ganga represents the stream of knowledge. And on the other hand, Yamuna represents the stream of love and devotion. And it is only in the confluence of both that our intellectual understanding, what we have understood with our mind through the teachings of our masters, can become an experiential reality. And that is why the importance of devotion has always been, even in the Bhagavad Gita, Patanjali, when he speaks of Ishvara Pranidhana, complete surrender to the omnipresent divinity, he speaks of these ideas of complete emotional involvement. And even one of the Upanishads, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, the last concluding mantra points to the same thing, that someone who has deep bhakti, deep devotion, and what does bhakti mean? Parama prema swarupa, deep love, complete love, has been able to evolve that love for that universal essence which has produced us, which nourishes every moment of our life, and into which we will merge. Somebody who has been able to develop that love for that Deva, that radiant essence, that luminous essence, that essence of light. Tasyaite kathita hirthaha prakashante mahatmanaha. Everything that has been said here in these teachings, and this is at the end of one Upanishad. So all the teachings that have been taught, they prakashante, they naturally get revealed or get easily understood or experienced by such a person. So there the importance of bhakti, the importance of bhakti yoga, the importance of devotional approach is important. The importance of that has been laid down, because one thing what devotion does, what love does, that it makes us humble. It brings us down to earth. It takes us away from the illusory understanding that an illusion that a scientist or a philosopher can easily fall prey to, that I know everything. I have the answer to all the questions. There are no mysteries anymore. We have cracked all the mysteries. So this illusion, or even the illusion that we can crack all the mysteries, this pride, this ego, which then in a way, in the understanding of the masters, this pride, this ego is what blocks our progress. Because the moment we think that we know everything, or the moment we think that we have the answers to everything, our progress stops. Why? Because receptivity, which is required constantly, the awareness that still there is some lingering ignorance, that awareness of one's ignorance, which is so essential for a person to be wise. As Socrates beautifully points it out, and as one of the great Vedantins, Appaya Dikshita, Swadhyana Dhyanino Viralaha, those who are aware of that, of their ignorance, are extremely rare. Everybody claims to know, I know the scriptures, I know the supreme truth. You can find so many people who know, but very few who know their own ignorance. But that is what leads to wisdom. And this receptivity, this humbleness, this openness to new ideas, which was so important for the Vedic masters, that it becomes one of the most important prayers of the Vedas. Ano bhadraha kratavo yantu vishwataha. Let beautiful thoughts, beneficial thoughts, auspicious thoughts come to me from all sides, from all parts of the world. But how can they come if I have closed my windows? If I've closed my own windows, how can the wind, the refreshing breath of wind, or how can the light that would purify the room within, how can that enter if the windows are kept closed? But with love, with devotion, we open those windows, we generate that receptivity. And it is to emphasize this aspect of our being that the masters, many times towards the end of their teachings, they go into a very devotional, submissive mode. On one side they declare that I am one with that supreme divinity, complete oneness, complete unity, but then also Dadhyanga does not, within these 18 verses, he doesn't want to leave out anything. He wants to create a synthesis of everything, that everything in its own place is very important. We saw that his tremendous approach of synthesis, that he wants to synthesize everything. So why should he leave out this most important aspect of yoga, bhakti yoga, devotional love? That is why this last concluding section is a section that consists of a few beautiful prayers. And now we are reaching the last one and the most humble one, which talks about leading us on the good path, leading us on the noble path. When we speak of the good path, the Vedantic teachings unfold from one very basic proposition, that every human being, and not only every human being, but every living entity, is in search of joy and happiness. That is what each one of us wants the most. Not only human beings, but even animals want joy, peace, happiness in their lives. And even trees. Look in the rainforest, how trees have to work hard to get hold of a little bit of light, because they also want to live peacefully. They also want to nourish themselves. They also want to grow. So for that, there you can see so clearly that even trees are making tremendous effort in their own limited way to be happy, content, joyful, peaceful in their life. So everybody, using the Sanskrit terminology, everybody wants to have sukha. Everybody wants to avoid dukkha. And why I'm using these two Sanskrit words? Because they convey something that the English words don't. Kha means space, the inner space. When we meditate, when we sit down, this inner conceptual space, infinite space that we feel the moment we close our eyes, in which all our thoughts arise, in which our feelings arise, in which the images that we see arise, the space in which we see the whole world, the way we see it out there, we can see it within ourselves, and we actually see it very clearly in our dreams. That internal space, that is kha. And if that space is good, happy, pleasant, nice, then it is called sukha. And if it is not good, if it causes pain, suffering, and discomfort, then it is called dukkha. Dukkha means bad space, very literal translation, because kha means space and duh means bad. So bad space is dukkha and good space is sukha. So everybody wants that inner space to be good, not to be bad, to be good. So Vedanta, the masters of Vedantin, the Upanishadic rishis, wanted to explore, their attempt was to explore the path that can lead towards creating sukha, a good space, and avoiding moving away from dukkha. However, they realized that there are three kinds of sukha, and we have to choose which one we want. The first one, which they call the sattvika sukha, the sattvika form of happiness, is yattadagre vishamiva. At the beginning, at the start of it, it feels bitter, like poison. But yattadagre vishamiva pariname amritopamam. But in its result, it is like nectar. It is sweet like nectar. Yattadagre vishamiva pariname amritopamam tatsukham satvikam proktam. Such sukha, such joy is sattvika joy, because initially a person has to, that is the joy that a person acquires by working hard, when a person makes tremendous effort. One has to work hard to cultivate. So initially it is very, very difficult. The initial push is always very difficult. For example, in the beginning, when we start practicing yoga, in the very beginning, when we first come to yoga, it is so difficult to create a momentum. Every posture seems to be difficult. Will we ever be able to do that? Everybody is bowing down so effortlessly on their knees in Paschimottanasana, and look at me, I can't even touch my feet, can't even reach my knees. But then that is why that initial push is so difficult. One has to make tremendous effort. It is painful. But then the deeper we go into it, the more joy, the more delight, the more happiness, the more lightness we experience as a result of that. And then slowly, as our life changes, we realize how much happiness, how much joy, how much peace, tranquility we derive out of this. So such joy, tatsukham satvikam proktam, such joy, such happiness is sattvika, which a person derives when atma buddhi prasadajam, when our faculty of understanding, this intellect, rather than going out from the body, enters within the body and goes closer to the inner center of consciousness. The closer it approaches, the closer our faculty of understanding, the buddhi, by which we know everything, the closer it goes to its own inner center, that consciousness, the more delight, the more joy it experiences. That is the origin of such type of sattvika joy. That is what yoga does. The more we get involved into our practice, the more we are engaged into our practice, the more joy, happiness, sense of delight we feel in our practice, because it gives us an opportunity to come closer to ourselves, to be with ourselves. So that is what they call Sattvika-sukha, which is initially painful, but then it is very pleasant at the end. Rajasika-sukha, the path of Rajasika-sukha, is the opposite. Initially it is very joyful. Initially it is very pleasant. When the buddhi, when the faculty of understanding goes out, experiences an external object with the help of the senses, initially it is very pleasant. It gives us a lot of happiness. But because it is dependent on the senses, which have limited capacity, we cannot have that pleasure for an infinite amount of time. After a while, either the object itself vanishes, or the capacity of our senses is depleted, because for that experiences, even if we don't realize, our senses have to work so hard. We enjoy watching television in the evening, but how much our eyes have to work hard, how much actually they have to suffer. And we feel that after when we are finished watching it, we really feel how heavy our eyes feel, because their complete energy has been depleted. So such joy, which is initially it is very pleasant, but the results usually can be very unsettling, uncomfortable. It ultimately then leads us into suffering, because that is what excess, particularly excess of any sensual delight, as long as it is balanced, it is fine. But excess of anything, even if we enjoy just the taste of our taste buds to the extreme, it will harm our body. We eventually end up harming our body. So excess of it is harmful. That type of sukha, that type of happiness, that type of joy, which is initially delightful, but in its result is painful. That type of joy is what they called rajasika-sukha, the second quality of happiness. The path of Sattvika-sukha, the path of highest form of happiness, is not the path that relies on depleting the energy of the senses, but it relies on strengthening the senses. It is not the path of negating the senses. That would be a misunderstanding. It is not a path of negating the senses. It is a path of strengthening the senses. And that is why I think the origins of yoga asana, and I think I'm speaking about this for the first time in all these years, this particular mantra came into my notice after a very long time, which is also, we used to recite it in the ashram where I studied all these texts, all these teachings every morning. But after I left that ashram in 2007, now nearly 9 years, I went out of that routine, and suddenly today morning that mantra came back to me, and it is beautiful because it is like a prayer, and which we used to recite every morning. It is from the Upanishads. Apyayantu mamangani, strengthen, show me the path to strengthen my limbs, each part of my body. Show me the path to strengthen them. Apyayantu mamangani, vak, to strengthen my speech. Pranaha, my prana. Chakshuhu, shrotram, all these different senses. Apyayantu mamangani, vak, pranas, chakshu, shrotramatho. Balam, show me the path to accumulate bala, strength, Strength on the physical level, strength on the level of the prana, strength on the level of the mind, psychological strength, and then eventually deep spiritual strength. So balam, indriyani cha sarvani, strengthen all my senses by which I experience that world. Why? Because all of these are manifestations of pure consciousness. Sarvani indriya apyayantu mamangani vakpranaschakshushrutramatho balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam. All this, my strength, these sense faculties, all of them are nothing but manifestations of that Brahman, of that consciousness about which Upanishads are speaking. They are manifestations of that. So there is no need of negating that, but rather strengthening them. Why to strengthen them? Tadatmani nirate. Not so that I can enjoy more and deplete my senses more. No, that's not the purpose. Tadatmani nirate. So that I can engage myself towards my own self, to the center within. Rather than having a centrifugal tendency in which my awareness flows away from the center into the external world, may I cultivate a centripetal tendency, a tendency in which consciousness, awareness, attention moves inward. So tadatmani nirate. So as I engage wholeheartedly towards my own self, tadatmani nirate, ya upanishatsu dharmaha, these principles which enable me to arise, to uplift myself, te mai santu, may they come within me, which have been expressed in the Upanishads. Upanishatsu dharmaha, te mai santu, te mai santu, te mai santu. May they be within me, may they be within me, may they be within me. So this is, this is not just a prayer that we sit up in every morning and just pray, recite it, and then don't do anything for the rest of the day about it. It's an inspiration that we have early in the morning, which then inspires us to do in the rest of the day something that will strengthen our senses and not deplete. So the joy that a person experiences after strengthening, after invigorating the senses, after strengthening them, the inner joy, the inner sense of delight that a person experiences, that is sattvika. The joy that a person experiences by depleting the senses, that is rajasa-sukka. And then you would ask me that isn't there a kind of happiness that is pleasant in the beginning and also at the end? Isn't there that kind of happiness? The masters say, yes, there is. But that is the happiness of laziness. That is the happiness of nidra, alasya, and pramadottham. That nidra which means sleep, alasya means sloth, and pramada, negligence. That is the joy and delight. That is also extremely important. It is part of our, to nourish ourselves, to refresh ourselves. That is also important, as long as it is not too much. As long, you said something very beautiful yesterday when he wanted to wake up one person who was sleeping. Then you said he was snoring, and then Rahulji wanted to wake him up. Then Mataji said, no, if somebody is snoring during the pranayama, then don't wake up. This idea actually comes in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It is from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, this idea. So, because that is also important. If somebody is tired, he needs to sleep, he has to experience that joy. That tamasika joy, which is joyful in the beginning and also at the end. It is important. It is important for our nourishment. But at least when we are awake, when we are ready to do something, when we are ready to make an effort, in those moments we have the choice of making effort to acquire sensuous pleasures, but they then make us selfish. Then everything that we do is for our own selfish purposes. We create a world filled with selfish beings. If the effort is made to achieve Sat-sukka, the highest form of sukha, the highest form of joy and happiness, which is not acquired by depleting the senses, but by strengthening them. Someone who follows that path, such a person, then that sukha, the pursuit of such kind of happiness in life, leads us towards selflessness. So that is the path that, after thinking so much, that is the path that the masters declared to be the good path. So we have one possibility on which there is no path at all. Nothing has to be achieved. Just fall down in the bed, fall asleep, be completely negligent nicely of everything, slothful, and no path, no effort. Because path means where a person has to make an effort. That is completely no path at all. Then the second one is also a path. Because on that, even to acquire objects of sense pleasure, we have to work hard. Everybody has to work hard in this world to have luxuries, to have sense delights. We have to work hard. We have to work hard to create them. We have to work hard to earn them, to have them. First of all, to accumulate them. What yoga kshema, when we use these two words together, yoga kshema, yoga, that what we don't have, to accumulate that what we don't have, and kshema, to save that what we have. Both requires tremendous effort. So that is also a path of tremendous effort. But the best path is the path that leads to the happiness that a person derives when a person comes closer to oneself, when a person strengthens the senses, when a person, rather than depleting them, energizes them, fills them with light and with energy. That is the best path. And when this next mantra is asking the Lord of Light, light itself, to lead us on that good path, to show us that good path, that is the path that he means. So let us pronounce this mantra today. Agne, 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 Naya, 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 Supatha, 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 Raye, 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 Asman, 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 Vishwani, 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 Deva, 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 Vayunani, 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 Vidvan, 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 Yuyodhi, 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 Asmat, 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 Juhuranam, 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 Eno, eno, bhuyishtham, te nama uktim vidhema. Om Agnenaya Supatharaye Asman Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidvan Yuyodhyasmajjuhurana Meno Bhuyishtante Nama Uktim Vidhema. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. So Agni Naya Supatha Raye. Agni Naya, O light, Naya, lead me, Supatha, through the good path, Raye, so that I can acquire prosperity. The word Rai in Sanskrit, of which Raye is a form, it means prosperity, fulfillment, the absence of lacking anything in one's life. So that is the first aspect of this teaching. For this, there are vices, negative tendencies in our life which pull us into the other direction, which pull us into the other path. So a person has to work to free themselves from that. And that is what the path of yoga, that is what the path of Ashtanga yoga does. The eight-limbed path of yoga, when Patanjali, he introduces the idea of Ashtanga yoga, Yogangana Manushtanat Ashuddhikshaye. After practicing the eight-limbed path of yoga, when the impurities diminish, when the impurities are reduced. And what is an impurity? An impurity is simply something that leads us away from ourselves. That's all. That's all what an impurity is. Something that blocks the path of the light from entering within, to put it differently. That is an impurity. Or to put it through a better example, to a better simile, would be, for example, that because the light does not need to enter from somewhere out there, the light is within. But the problem is that it cannot enlighten our life like earlier, they used to have these lanterns. They used to have a chimney over it, and in the morning the chimney used to be covered with soot. And because of that soot, even though the light is burning, it could not fill the room because the soot blocked the light. So what early in the morning these people of old times had to do, they had to remove the chimney, clean it, and then just put it back on the light, and then the whole room was filled with light again. That is exactly what yoga, when they speak of this chitta parikarma, this cleaning of the chitta, cleaning of the mind, which is like a chimney, like a layer over that inner light of consciousness, and therefore, because that has some blocking, some impurities, and therefore that inner light which is ever present does not enlighten our mind, our understanding, our whole life. So that soot has to be removed. That is the second thing that this mantra speaks about. And the last part of this mantra, have you noticed, is beautiful. Te namas, te nama uktim vidhema. It's just namaste. And today in the world, even those who don't start their classes, their yoga classes, with a prayer to sage Patanjali because it seems too religious to them. Even they start their classes, their yoga classes, at least with Namaste. Because I bow down with my head, heart, and hand, with my faculties of working, with my heart, with my center of love, and with my intellectual faculties. I bow down, I submit myself in front of the light within myself and within each one of you. That is what Namaste means. And this Namaste, again, we can see it very clearly here, just because of the meter. Te had to be said first, and Namas has been said after. In some other mantras, Namaste Rudramanyava Udota Ishave Namaha, there Namaste can be seen very clearly. So like this, the teaching of this Upanishad ends with that Namaste. So it really reminds us that we are not submitting or bowing down in front of something out there, but in front of something that is the essence of my being within myself. And therefore, because it is the essence of my being, it is the essence of every being, that consciousness itself, that greatest mystery of consciousness. I bow down, I submit, because no faculty, intellectual faculty, is capable of fully comprehending it. That's why the only option is just to lie down, to give up one's ego of the capability of knowing everything and allow it to take over. Like when a person submits, my father always gives this beautiful example that when you stand in the ocean and a wave is coming towards you, if you stand in front of it, then it will throw you back. But if you submit in front of it and you just allow it to imbibe you, go over you, then you fully enjoy taking bath in that infinite ocean. The same thing is true about the infinite ocean of consciousness. There, this effort of standing in front of it, because it's infinite, it is timeless, that pride, that ego to be able to know it, that has to be thrown away. Otherwise, we will be thrown back. And that is what happens with great scholars, with masters who only follow the path of jnana yoga. It happens. They fall back. Because Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to express this very beautifully, that a jnani is like a monkey's child, and a devotee is like a kitten. The difference between both is that both of them are completely dependent and reliant on the mother. But monkey's child clings to the mother. The kitten completely submits. It doesn't cling to its mother, so the mother itself holds it and carries it. Now, the child can lose the grasp. Monkey's child can lose its grasp. It happens. I've seen it happening in the forest. I live in the forest. Sometimes the mother has such a big jump that the child loses the grasp and falls. It survives, it dies. That depends on its fate. But it happens, it loses the grasp. But on the other hand, the kitten, because it is being held by the mother itself in its submission, it cannot fall. Because it is not holding it, it is being held. That is the difference. That is the difference between a devotee who submits and between a jnani. And that is why the only accusation that yogis have suffered and jnanis have suffered in India is this accusation. When they move away from the path of devotion and hence start becoming egoistic, proud, that is the only criticism that they have had to face in India. Any Indian can easily relate with this, because we keep on hearing this criticism of scholarly people, of jnanis and yogis, blind hatha yogis who think we can achieve everything through our own efforts. Yet in the last moment that is what Patanjali said. Tivra samveganam asannaha, after he talked about making the greatest effort, that the goal of yoga is closest for those who make the greatest effort. After that, he speaks about submission. So he speaks about it, because we can only do our best. After that, we have a mirror can only do its best to be able to reflect that light, that ray of light when it comes. But it cannot go to the sun. It has to wait with patience for that ray of light to come to it. But yes, it can clean itself, it can do everything. It can prepare itself for that moment when it comes. But it cannot do it. That is why a student once came to a master and said, "Sir, I want to be enlightened. What should I do? What can I do?" And then the master says, "Nothing. You can't do anything. You can do only as much as you can do to make the sun rise. You can't do anything." Then the student said, "But then why all these asanas, pranayama, meditation? Why all this effort? Why do you teach all these things? These things are unnecessary if I can't do anything. Then why should I do all these things?" Then he said, "These things are necessary to wake you up when the sun rises, otherwise you will be asleep." So that is their necessity. That is what a yogi needs to do, to prepare oneself so that when the sun rises. But the sun will rise on its own. There we cannot do anything. The light will rise on its own. Therefore, after making the greatest efforts, all we can do is just submit. That is the moment when the real Christ comes into being, because that was the moment when, in the last moment when he says, "Thy will be done." Thy will be done. Thy will be done. That is the last moment. He made tremendous effort. All his life is filled, all his 32 years are filled with tremendous effort. See how he went to Jericho to be in the wilderness for 40 days, to be tempted then by the evil and all those ideas. But then in the last moment, when he completely submits, after that, he is chosen to be the child of God. It is that thing that these mantras are talking about. We'll come back to this mantra again. We still have to discuss it word by word, which we will do in our next session. The last mantra, as I said, it is not by the same seer. It is by an extremely ancient seer. It is originally from the Rig Veda, which is the most ancient collection of teachings on the Indian subcontinent. And that text is well known to have a very hidden language. It refers to itself as ninya vachamsi, as hidden speech that hides in itself so much, so that a person has to enter deep in those words, in the message, to see the depth of that message. A mere translation, a verbal translation of the words doesn't do justice. So this is what we are seeing when we look what they mean by supatha. All that, when we go deep into it, when we analyze it, we understand the depth of message that is there in these words. They could not present the transverbal reality better in words. Nobody could have done that. So, any questions, any feedback, any thoughts that you would like to share? Yes?
To me, it seemed when you talked about the three kinds of sukha, that it's somehow faulty or incomplete. Okay, the last thing you said about letting go, I was going to ask that it's part of satvika. Because if you just make an effort and expect the result, that is not it. But it sounded like it feels bitter, but if you keep trying, it will turn into sweetness. It's not like that for me. And it doesn't. I don't think it covers. It doesn't have to feel bitter, even if you make an effort. I don't think it has to feel bitter in the beginning. Maybe at times it will be painful, or whatever. And also there's this element of grace and of effortlessness, and when you just flow. I think there's a fourth kind of happiness.
That is the catch in the words. Let me point it out. In Sanskrit, Ananda and Sukha, they are not the same thing. In English, we don't have two different words. But in Sanskrit, what we are talking about is still Sukha. And the fourth kind of thing that you are speaking about is Ananda. For that we use in the Upanishads, Ananda, beatitude, bliss would be the correct word for that. And the beautiful thing about the fundamental difference between Sukha and Ananda is that Sukha has its opposite, Dukkha. Ananda does not have its antonym. Even in Sanskrit language, you don't have the antonym of Ananda. Ananda is just beatitude. You don't have its antonym. You can have its absence when that beatitude is not there, but you cannot have its complete diametrically opposite thing like you can have with Sukha. So the kind of Sukha, Sattvika Sukha, that he is still defining is still the kind of Sukha that a person derives from selfless activities such as charity, where a person has to make effort. But then in the result of it, there is tremendous satisfaction. That kind. But then the Upanishadic masters at some point, when they do the final push, they say that, come on, now get beyond even the Sattvika Sukha. You have to raise beyond that to experience
like the
Ananda.
silence after M, the A-U-M,
Exactly.
the three stages,
Exactly.
and there's the silence that comes.
Yes. So that is the fourth one, yes.
It's possible to raise beyond, because as you said it before, it's just by the grace of the divine that you will touch.
Sorry?
It's just by the grace of the divine that you will be touched. I mean, that's what it's not raised beyond. How do you raise beyond?
We cannot raise beyond, but we can be raised beyond. Raised beyond. Let me correct myself. I expressed it wrongly. That we cannot raise ourselves beyond, but we can be raised beyond. And the whole path of yoga, the whole, should I call it a path, should I call it whatever we want to call it, but what we call yoga, when Sri Krishna, he expresses it in the second chapter very beautifully, to raise beyond even the Vedas, the Vedic teachings, when he says that the Vedic teachings, these Vedic teachings are still in the realm of the three gunas. Arjuna, your goal is to raise beyond the three gunas. Traigunya Vishayaha Vedaha, the Vedas are still within the realm of the three gunas. Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna. You should look for transcending, for be able to transcend the three gunas. When Patanjali speaks of Paravairagya, the ultimate detachment in which a person even detaches themselves from the Sattvika Sukha, from the Sattvika joy, from the highest form of joy which a person derives from knowledge, from wisdom, from understanding. They both And that is a bondage. In the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sukha Sangena Badhanati, Jnana Sangena Chanakha. Even this Sattva Guna binds us by attaching us to joy and to knowledge. So why not to free oneself even from that? Those are the very final steps from samprajñāta into asamprajñāta. But they also have been
Such a
talked
high
about.
level of consciousness that you
Such a high
amazing
level of-
that they
yes.
found the words
To actually express
talk
it,
about
to
it.
talk
It's
about it.
unimaginable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
क्या कहूँ?
So there of course, complete submission, complete bhakti to that inner essence is what leads us further. Any other?
This, what you taught, this class actually gave me, spread some light on something a question that's been kind of tormenting me for years. I'm not going to say it, I mean now to assimilate it and meditate on it, but something just, for years, something I've been questioning myself.
It's, yeah.
No, a little bit. Wait, I wish that hey,
It's the grace of the masters, the grace of the rishis.
like a little epiphany. Like years, tormenting.
So I'm sure that everyone must be very tired after the tough, hard class of today morning. Mataji, not you, not me, but everyone else I'm sure must be. I think that is what you meant in the beginning. You meant something else, but that is what I understood when you made that sign that everybody must be made. She killed us, okay. Yeah, so I'll let you go then. Okay, so let us conclude and with the final prayer of universal well-being. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः. Thank you very much. Hari Om.